Bichara Supply Chain, highlighting and showcasing solutions for the most complex challenges facing the industry in 21st century by our team of subject matter experts and mentors. Broadcasting every week, all year round, we will present the most up-to-date series of podcasts and webinars.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bichara Supply Chain. This is Nur Hadi, your host, and I'm very exciting because we got a special guest today, with me now, Dr. Muddassir. He is a supply chain professional, also trainer, a speaker, and the author and also blogger and a leading supply chain blog called SCMDOJO. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Muddassir, and welcome to Bichara Supply Chain.
Thanks for having me. How are you folks? How's everybody? Hope you guys are safe and doing well with your families. That's the key message here for everybody.
That's great. So today's topic is key pillars for the supply chain competitiveness. But before we step into the main topic, could you please brief a bit about yourself, your professional background, and how you end up with a current role in supply chain?
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Muddassir Ahmed, as Narudi explained. I'm originally from Pakistan. I did my engineering degree back home, and then I went to do my master's in management, production, and supply chain from Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. I had a great experience there professionally, and as a student, then I moved to UK to search for a full-time scholarship, which I had received from Lancaster University Management School. It was a pretty good experience. But then I was working part-time for a company called Eaton. They gave me the full-time job, so it was very difficult to work, full-time PhD with full-time job. So I negotiated with my company, and what happened was they end up funding my PhD. So I've gone from a full-time PhD scholar to the part-time one. It took me 7 years to complete my PhD, but it was a fantastic experience. So once I finished my PhD in 2015, what happened was, I have too much content and I do not know, what to do with it. So I did learn about blogging, and I love sharing knowledge. For me, sharing knowledge is essentially is a form of learning. So if I learn something new, I like to share, and the more you share, the more you learn, kind of philosophy. So that's why what I started doing. So Muddassirism was just basically a supply chain hardcore theoretical blog, which I started in 2017. And after 2 years, 18 in fact, I started doing the rebranding because there's other people who were contributing as well. So it became SCMDOJO, Supply Chain Management Dojo. And dojo is a Japanese word which means a place to learn and meditate, as probably you folks know in Southeast Asia. So so the key purpose of SCMDOJO is basically share knowledge, and I would like to think the supply chain knowledge and solutions for everyone, not just one person. And it has got quite a bit following. As you can see, I've got 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. I've got 70,000-80,000 visitors on my website. It is one of the leading blogs, as people say. I have a very nice weekly newsletter which I send it to people, about 27,000-28,000 people. So I would recommend to everybody to join. Just to say the last part, I have some very useful guides and tools available, which for all the supply chain professionals, just go and click on the tools, click on the guides, and I'm sure you will find it very, very beneficial. So that's a very high level introduction for me and myself and my blog.
Yeah, awesome. So I wanted to jump to the fundamental questions. When and how specifically can supply chain leaders begin to identify and then revisit their supply chain strategy in meeting the competitive business? And additionally, Dr. Muddassir, can you please share with your view with regards to the competitions on the recent day?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very, very good question. So let me find the right answer for this. So let's understand the supply chain strategy. So what is the strategy to start with, right? supply chain is, for me, the word strategy means is a set of decisions in a set of direction, right? So whatever direction you have defined, you have to take certain decisions towards that direction, right? So that's a very simple definition of the strategy. Michael Porter is one of the famous writer. I think if you want to learn about strategy, let's study about Michael Porter. I think this is one of his definition. So first of all, supply chain leaders has to understand what direction business is going, right? Are you going towards more cost leadership? Are you going more towards innovation leadership? Or because the companies I work for, we thoroughly believe that supply chain is essentially will give us a competitive advantage, because there's only so much product innovation you can do, right? There's only so much product innovation do. So what differentiates between you and your competition is essentially how better you are, right, in providing customer service. So what is customer service? Is essentially 4 elements, which is cost, quality, delivery, and lead time. So the better you are in providing a better quality at the best cost, the quicker and on time, the better advantage you have over your competition, right? So let's come to about revisiting. So that's one part of identifying the direction, and you take certain decisions. So once you know which direction you want to go and what decisions you want to make to achieve that strategy, you need to look into your supply chain design, right? And with all due respect to those supply chain leaders, I'm not sure a lot of supply chain leaders have a very good understanding how to basically assess their supply chain design, right? So what does actually supply chain design mean? The way when I say supply chain design is essentially 4 variables they need to focus on, right? So focus on product segmentation. They have a functional product or an innovative product. So if you're Apple, for example, supply chain leader, you're a very innovative product, and the design of that supply chain of that product design should be different. Therefore, supply chain design should be different. If you're selling jeans, which is a very functional product, then it is a different ballgame, right? Therefore, supply chain design should be educated to that. So the first is product segmentation in terms of design. The second is customer segmentation, right? So you have to classify your customers into your core customers, strategic customer, maintain customer. Some customers maybe you do not want to work with because they are pain in the ass and you don't make any money with them, right? So that's the second part. The third part I would say is what is more important is the lead time segmentation, right? You need to understand for which product what lead time you want to supply, right? For example, you are into a made to stock business, made to order business, assembled to order business. You have to pick from those elements of the lead time, or you could be supplying combination of all of them, right? So that's the third element. The fourth element, and the important element, is essentially supply segmentation, right? So you have to define what are key, strategy suppliers, core suppliers, maintain suppliers, exit suppliers, because based on that, you will basically define what, supply chain is always built on the performance of the suppliers and what suppliers you want to work with strategically and what are the ones you don't want to work strategically.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to revisit, again, as I said, understand what makes your business competitive, right? And then take certain decisions on those directions. Revisit your supply chain strategy based on the 4 variables I've explained.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you wrote as well this topic at your blog where you have mentioned about the 4 pillars of supply chain strategy, which are people, process, system, and execution. So can you tell us how actually it works, Dr. Muddassir?
Yeah, I think that's the strategy of the 4 pillars of supply chain I'm trying to promote for some times. And I thoroughly believe as a supply chain professional, as a leader, if you focus on any problem, if you focus on any short-term, long-term, how big or small problems you face, if you focus on those 4 pillars and try to segment the for example, the root cause using 5 whys or whatever philosophy you use or method you use to classify the problem and try to fit into those 4 boxes, then you will understand where the problem lies. It could be a combination of all, or could be one specific issue. So I think that people, when we say are the most important assets, most people will say that, but what do you mean by people is our asset? So what I believe is to recognize our most important asset, our people, by building standard organization structures behind it. So the roles and responsibilities of people should be clearly defined. It doesn't mean they are doing a one specific job. It could be doing, there are multiple things. That's fine with us, as long as it needs to be defined very well. Okay, so that's the most important part. So once the people, clear structures, responsibility, they have to be engaged, they have to have a performance management systems, then you need to focus on designing your key processes. So supply chain, if you think about what is a process, so process is essentially a box with a set of activities. And in this box, there is an input and there's an output going forward, right? So any process which doesn't have input, doesn't have the set of activity, and doesn't have output is not essentially a process. So most of the things we do in supply chain does have a process, right? So define your key processes, right? There's a difference between an SOP, which is standard operating procedure, and a process. Process is slightly on a higher level. So define your key processes, and every process is, and I believe, is measurable, right? And it helps you to provide the best possible information for your business based on the analysis, right? So define key processes. Then the third pillar, and I think most businesses have some kind of systems, and we should use the processes which should be designed around the systems we use, right? So let's assume if you don't have a process and you've gone ahead and bought a system, very expensive ERP system, whatever. And if you do not have the process which tells people how to use it, then everybody will be using this in a very unstructured manner. They will be using it in their own way, and therefore the output would be different. Therefore the input would be different and the output would be different. So there will be a variances in the process, and once there's a variances, that means is extra cost, is not efficient per se, right? So that will lead to the fourth element, which is the execution. So we should make the full use of people, systems, models, planning to achieve the best possible cost for the business, the best possible customer service, and basically maximize our profitability. So if you summarize the concept, train the people, find the best people, have a roles and responsibility, understand what engage them, define your key processes, write them down, train them down, so everybody knows what are the key structure processes. The processes should be designed to maximize the system efficiency, should be written around the systems. If the system gets changes, the processes should be updated for the most consistent output. And once you have all these three together, the focus should be on execution.
Mm. Awesome. Other things I would like to ask is, what's the first step supply chain leaders should take to start applying the advice that you offer in the pillars of supply chain strategy? Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah,
I was asking, what is the first step supply chain leaders should take when they wanted to apply these four pillars of supply chain strategy?
Okay, good, very good question. So the question you've asked, okay, what are the first steps someone should take to upload? So each of these pillar, so to basically apply these four pillars of supply chain strategy, which I've explained, each of them has a certain tools which you can use, or certain theories you can use. So for example, when you talk about understanding, to recognize our most important asset, our people, by building a standard structure with the roles and responsibility, right? So the things you can use, for example, that you can develop a supply chain council. You can go to SIPs or Apex. You can refer them. You can have basically a skill matrix. So a skill matrix for a planner and a buyer, which I had, is different from the skill matrix for an operator in a warehouse, because the activity they do in the warehouse, picking, packing, and shipping, is different if you are a buyer and planner. So define the skill matrix for each of them. Furthermore, you can look into I have a model which I think people like. I would call it a career development model. So where you can define your short-term goals, your long-term goals, and basically identify the gaps between your where you are right now and what short and long-term goals you have, and how to close that gap. If that means you need more on-job training, or basically you might need to go and do the SIPS or APEX or whatever certification, that's fine. I have some courses on my website, you can do it. I think what I'm also doing, I'm very much keen on this, and that is a core purpose of SCMDOJO. My aim, my vision is to give people the tools which basically they identify the gaps in their skills they have, and then we provide the content, and I would like to provide them a content which could be courses or guides which they can which they can use to close those gaps. So therefore, if you go to SCMDOJO, click on the tools, there is a materials management competency assessment. So it has 8 categories where you can think about, you can assess yourself into a best practice of demand planning, supply planning, SNOP, warehouse and distribution. There's a tools for the warehouse assessment. There's a tool for SNOP, self-assessment. So once you use those self-assessment tools, then you will know the gap between where you are right now in terms of your existing knowledge and where you want to be, right? And therefore you can go and close those gaps after identifying what are the knowledge gaps you have. So that's the first steps in terms of people. Mm-hmm. Now, and all of them cannot be done over time. So it cannot be done immediately. So it can be done. All of them can be done over time. So you basically need to be patient and come up with a plan that for example, 2020 we want to focus on developing our demand planning competency, for example. Mm-hmm. Right, next year we want to focus on something else. You can do that, right? So the next pillar of when you talk about the how to focus on the core. So what the leaders should do to focus on core processes. So first of all, they have to understand the characteristics that impact key processes. So through data, through the systems they have. So for example, every business should have a process to define ABC segmentation. There's a tool in SCMDOJO. I've written a very nice blog. There's a video available. Just go and look at this, and it should be done every 3 months, 6 months, whatever your business is. Again, SNOP, sales inventory and operations planning. Sales and operations planning is a very, very important process. I'm developing a course on this. I'm launching a course, basically a webinar, a training. If anybody listening to me can go to my newsletter, can subscribe, and you will get an email invitation to sign up for this training. It will be a 3-hour course, 1 hour each we will be doing. And when I go to training and seminars, I'm also a speaker. I speak in a lot of conferences. I should have mentioned at the start. And I do a masterclass for this and generally get paid a lot of money, but I will do in quarantine these days, I will do online, and people can sign up. It will be a pretty nominal price, $15, $20 per hour. So it's been pretty good. Anyway, so define SNOP, have a proper inventory management process. There's a huge amount of free material on inventory management in my website. You can use that, and also focus on excess and obsolete inventory. You're defining your strategy suppliers. There's plenty of processes you can find. Define them, write it down, and measure them. Okay, so that's the key processes. Then we move on, basically understanding the systems, right? The idea here is to leverage the use of standard systems by building core processes around them and training the people to use them effectively. So systems like ERP systems, if you're using SAP, any forecasting systems, demand solutions, Forecast Pro, any procurement system. So any systems you're using is essentially input outputs. As my boss used to say, any system is as good as possible if there's a shit in and then there's a shit out. So the idea is to have a good input to that system so you get the better output of that system. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now I'm gonna move to the one important concept, which probably you don't see my screen, but I'll try to explain where possible. So when it comes to execution, right? What I like to tell people is to focus on a vital few not trivial many, because what we're trying to do is try to do too many things and try to do it too quickly. And that for me is not the right approach, because the idea of continuous improvement is you do a small step, but do it continuously over the period of time. So once those small steps will put together, it will create a very good picture over the period of time. So this is one message I want to give. The second message I want to give here is that what generally people do when trying to do any improvement work or trying to execute, there's a lot of discussion. They identify opportunities for improvements. After a discussion, they put a lot of effort and they put a lot of time, but then they sit down and they take the break and they'll sit down and they'll write their basically the list of strategies and the actions they want to do, and they spend actually a very little or lesser time and lesser effort in actually implementing those strategies. So what I'm trying to tell people, actually spend less time and effort in discussing and identifying, more time and effort in basically listing down the actions and what you want to do, and more time and lot more effort in actually executing those strategies. Because once you execute, you basically, some would work, some will not work. That's just life, and you learn from it and reapply, right? You again go through the same cycle. Identify. That's the famous plan, do, check, act, right? You do it, you learn from it. If it doesn't fail, you go back, you learn from your mistake and apply it. That's just life. So once you execute it better, you can you can have celebrate some success and actually probably do more with less effort. So that's my philosophy of the 4 pillars.
All right, perfect. Okay, so before we close this discussion, Dr. Muddassir, and also to summarize what we discussed, what is the most important thing in formulating a supply chain strategy? What is your view?
As I said, I think I would summarize the two concepts. So start from actually the 3 concepts I would say. So what is most important in formatting the supply chain strategy? The first is define the direction you want to go, right? Okay. So what direction as a business you want to go. The second is essentially understand what is your existing supply chain design, right? And again, we discussed before, identify the 4 variables which you need to focus on, which is your product segmentation, customer segmentation, lead time segmentation, and supply segmentation. And then once you define that design, you try to build your supply chain strategy or formatting a supply chain strategy using the 4 pillars, saying these are the things we want to do for people, these are the processes we want to develop or want to focus, these are the system things we want to do, buy new systems or implement new systems or improvise or innovate existing systems or leverage them more, and execute how we can execute it better, because execution doesn't happen without thinking, so that takes time.
At Bichara Supply Chain, we are committed to driving global perspective to embrace technological adaptation in improving process efficiencies. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share Bichara Supply Chain. And stay tuned for the latest updates. To learn more, visit our website www.bicharasupplychain.com. Thank you for listening to us. We look forward to seeing you at our next episode.